Fabulous. So hi everybody and welcome back to the Brynels Insights podcast. I'm Faith Brynel and happy new year to all of you. This is season 6 and episode 6 with Caroline Flanagan. Hi Caroline. How are you doing today?
Hi, Faith. It's great to be here. I'm very well, thank you. Very excited to be on your podcast.
I'm glad. I can tell you're very passionate, and that's the energy that we need from the guest speakers. So wonderful. And it's great to have you as the first guest speaker I'm interviewing in 2024 to kick off the new year with Caroline. So Caroline, I'm going to hand over to you very briefly. If you could just introduce yourself to the listeners for us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So I'm Caroline Flanagan. For those of your listeners who are new to me, I am the career progression coach for Black lawyers.
Wow.
I'm also the author of 2 books. I'm an international keynote speaker, and I'm the mother of 4 boys, which I'm very proud of.
Wonderful, Caroline. You are an inspiration. Just in that brief context summary, you are so inspiring, the way that you continue to press on, even though you have to do so much. So I'm going to just, I've got a few questions here, and I'm the kind of interviewer who likes to throw in the extra questions. So don't be alarmed. This is just preparation in advance, just in case God drops one into my mind while I'm sitting here. So let's just get started. So as someone who's navigated the complexities of both the legal field, and conquered imposter syndrome, and just for all the listeners who are either new or those who are have been listening for a while, we do tackle and talk about imposter syndrome quite a lot. And that's why I'm very interested to really get your perspective on this. So could you share a pivotal moment or experience that shaped your journey and really transformed imposter syndrome from a challenge into a strength?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say if I were to pick out, there's 2 parts to this answer. The first one is that it's been, I guess, more of an evolution, because at the beginning of my imposter syndrome journey started like my first days of primary school, when on the first day of school, I looked around in the assembly hall and realized I was the only Black pupil in an all-white school, right? Really fertile ground for those imposter syndrome feelings of feeling like a fraud. Your success is down to luck. What am I doing here? I'm going to be exposed. And I've had that experience. That experience has followed me throughout my whole career. So in one sense, there has been always imposter syndrome has been a part of my life and part of the backdrop. But you asked me about a pivotal moment, Faith. And what I will say is that so I was a lawyer in private practice. I worked in the city as a finance lawyer for 9 years. And I was experiencing imposter syndrome all through that. I was pretty much always the only person of color in the room when I was in the meetings, whether it was in the corridors, around the coffee machine. And what happened after I left, stopped being a lawyer, and I then transitioned to a new profession, which is what I do now. And I was learning so much about the way my brain works, and I was really excited to share so much value. And I was writing my first book, which is called Baby Proof Your Career. And I did all the work, Faith, of writing that. And then just at that kind of moment when basically I was pressing publish, right? Giving the book to come out, I had a complete, like what I call my imposter syndrome crisis. And at that moment, I thought, I can't bring a book out into the world. That's too exposing. This is like the ultimate moment in which I'm going to be found out. And for those of your listeners who have experienced imposter syndrome, that fear of being found out is such a huge one, right? That moment of thinking, I spent all this time working on a book, doing something really big, a big passion and mission of mine, and the fact that I'm not going to put this out into the world because of imposter syndrome. Was a pivotal moment, because I realized at that moment, I have a choice, right? I let imposter syndrome be a weakness that holds me back. And so it holds me back from fulfilling my goals, following my mission, or I find a way to succeed with imposter syndrome, right? So not trying to get rid of it, because I'd sort of experimented with trying to get rid of it. I'd done all the usual tricks, right? That hadn't worked. It was the moment when I realized, what if I just learn to accept imposter syndrome, make friends with it, understand it, see what it's all about. So I want to say to you, in answer to your question, is the pivotal moment was the moment when I decided to stop fighting my imposter syndrome and just make it go away as if it was this horrible part of me I didn't want.
Embracing it.
Embrace and accept it.
Well, thank you, Caroline. That's very, very interesting. And that's really, really great how you've kind of spoken about, really mapped that methodically, talking about your journey as well. And, I too can relate, I too can relate I too can relate as a Black woman, having gone into various number of spaces and finding that there's not many people who look like me. And so it's about kind of really pushing through that. And really it's about using that as your tipping point moment, as Malcolm Gladwell would term it. Really not letting it affect you, but kind of pushing through. And it reminds me of a scripture that I love, which is I press toward the mark of the high calling in Christ Jesus, because it's like, yes, we have those struggles, yes, we have those obstacles, but we still have to press. And it really kind of coincides with what you've just mentioned about how you had to embrace it, you had to not let it affect you. Yes, it was present, but you couldn't let it be your end story. You couldn't let that define you, which I find very, very interesting. I wrote down one key word, which is resilience. That really shows resilience, Caroline, how you were able to and still continue to push past that as well. And thank you for speaking about that very candidly and honestly, because I think it will definitely help the listeners who are tuning in today to understand that people such as yourself do struggle with these things, but you don't let them be your defining moment.
Yeah, and what I will say is there's another element to it. So there is the pushing and the resilience and the continuing, but it's definitely, I talk a lot about succeeding because of my imposter syndrome, not in spite of it. And so that's the distinction I'd like to make for your listeners, is it's not like I've got imposter syndrome, I'm just gonna like succeed despite of it. It's that creating a relationship with it that allows you to use it to your advantage. So the knowledge it gives you about yourself and about your strengths, and use that to help you continue forward.
Thank you, Caroline, for that distinction. I want to talk about your book now called Be the First, People of Colour, Imposter Syndrome and the Struggle to Succeed in a White World, which sheds light on a critical issue. So first of all, which is very, very interesting to me, what inspired you to write this book, and what key insights or solutions does it offer to address imposter syndrome and promote diversity in the legal profession?
Yeah, big question. So, and there's several parts to that, right? So starting with what inspired me to write it. I have, as you know, and as I've said, imposter syndrome has been, or may not have said yet, but it's been a very big part of my work for a number of years, and my work in coaching professionals, particularly lawyers, to achieve their goals and fulfill their career ambitions. And so in that imposter syndrome work, I spend, if I work in the legal profession, it is largely, certainly here in the UK, and certainly in London, particularly in the corporate world, a very white environment. Okay. And what I noticed, so imposter syndrome, it was becoming part of the narrative. Lots of people were starting to talk about it. And I had this in-depth knowledge about it that I was teaching and coaching and speaking on. But one of the things I noticed was that in all of the contexts in which imposter syndrome was coming up, it was talked about as a sort of like a one-dimensional experience, meaning everybody experiences imposter syndrome in the same way. And what I discovered increasingly as I was working with ethnic minority lawyers was that actually, and based also on my own personal experience, imposter syndrome is different for people of color. Because it's like the imposter syndrome in its purest form is your own internal battle with how you feel in an environment, feeling like a fraud, your success is down to luck. What's different if you are the only Black lawyer in a room full of white lawyers is the sense that not only you might feel that way, or you may not even feel that way internally, but your environment mirrors that to you. So that could be how you're treated, how you're spoken to, being mistaken for the person who makes coffee when actually you're a senior associate or a junior partner. Not too many junior Black around just yet, but we're getting there. So what happens is the way you're treated in your environment makes you feel like an imposter. And it was that piece that really inspired me to write this book, because I wanted to speak to the Black experience, the ethnic minority experience of imposter syndrome, when you're trying to succeed, but your environment sends you messages, makes you feel like you don't belong. So that's the inspiration piece. And then in terms of the message and what did you ask me? What was the main message of the book? Or can you remember the next part?
Yeah, before I actually go and ask the next question, just to pivot here, it's very, very interesting how you're talking about actually centering and focusing on the Black experience. How, yes, imposter syndrome as a notion, as an idea, the concept is something that's widely, it's widely, people do experience it widely, but it does differ in terms of looking at the Black experience, Caroline. So thank you for really talking about that. It's very interesting because even if you, as a Black professional, didn't actually feel it internally, when you step into that environment, the external, the way that things look externally, would actually cause that pressure to start coming into your mindset, and you could feel yourself moving from a, let's say you had a growth mindset before, you could find yourself just very slowly and subtly really falling and shifting into a fixed mindset. But the second part of the question was talking about what key insights or solutions does your book offer to address imposter syndrome and also promote diversity in the legal profession?
Yeah, thank you for that.
No
So the key insight, and I've alluded to this before, is that experiencing imposter syndrome, that isn't a problem. I think a lot of the talk around imposter syndrome is it's a bad thing, you need to get rid of it before you can achieve your goals. And one of the key messages I offer is it's not a problem to have this experience or awareness of being the only one in the room. And that is the experience. If you're feeling like an imposter and you are very different, you're different in some way to your environment. So that experience of being the only one in the room, that isn't a problem. And actually, the only thing that's required and the solution is that you change the way you think about yourself in the room. So the book is called Be the First. And the reason it's called Be First, which is the core message, is because what I want for you when you read this book, and what my messaging is and all the coaching I do for my Black lawyers, is it's an invitation, a call to action to stop thinking of yourself as the only one, in the sense of how that can make you feel powerless, right?
Yeah.
And to start thinking yourself, or continue to think about yourself, as the first. So my sort of call to action is, you're not the only one in the room, you're the first. So the circumstances of it being just you in a culture, in a law firm, in an environment that is overwhelmingly white, the circumstances, those don't change, but who you are in that room completely changes. How you show up in that room changes when you shift your mindset from I'm the only one to
I'm the first. That's profound.
So much more. Yeah.
That is profound. Honestly, as I sit here and listen to you kind of really go into depth and delve into that concept, it's very interesting, because thinking that you're like the only one and you're powerless and you're by yourself, it makes you feel like you may as well just kind of throw in the towel and give up. But the way that you've put a spin on that, be the first, actually be the first to enact that change, be the first to change the narrative, to open up the doors for others. And that is very interesting, because that person is basically stepping into the unknown, but they are showing that they too have something to offer in that particular space. And that's profound. And I know that for a fact that all the listeners who are listening to this now will be very interested and enthralled by this, and really just thinking, wow, yes, in my workplace I may feel like I'm alone, but I can be the first. And that's a very profound title, as is your explanation of the concept.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. And what I want to add to just sort of round that off is that call to be the first. It may be about you being first past the post. Like sometimes it is about being, oh yeah, I'm the first one to make, I don't know, in the term, or so. Sometimes it's that, but it's actually it's about how you think about yourself. That's the key. So not so much how other people see you, whether they see you as the first or not, but how you think about yourself as I'm the first. And that is what makes you show up more courageously, the resilience you talk about, much more powerfully, having that determination. And it also enables you, because you're no longer in this sort of victim state, which I can call it, which is how it can feel when you feel like the only one. It enables you to see all of the opportunities that are right in front of you for connecting with people who are different to you, for seizing opportunities. Helps you see people who are maybe trying to include you, but you didn't see it before because you were so caught up in
that mindset,
I'm the only one. So the shift in the mindset is about you and how you think about yourself before it is anything else. And if you did nothing else except think about yourself in that way, you would bring everybody along with you. And I say that because I hear a lot, well, if you're in a certain position, it's your responsibility to bring everybody along with you. And I want to offer, so my approach and what I teach is you don't need to do anything different. If you focus on being the first and showing up in your most powerful way,
Others
you
will
are
follow.
already opening. You're opening the doors. You are breaking down barriers. You are breaking bias. And that is what allows other people to come behind you.
That's really interesting, and that changes the narrative as well, because when they can change their perspective of themselves, they are then changing their way in terms of how they see things, how they see opportunities. As you said before, how they may have seen something as an obstacle, they now see it, and they now see that obstacle as an opportunity to grow, to push themselves, to really then to refine themselves and build on and become that lawyer that they want to be, that they need to be in that particular space. And really, it's what my dad Gilbert Pommel always says. He says, Faith, move from a victim mindset and become a victor. Because when you start to see yourself as the only one, I'm by myself, you are then you're then kind of almost shrinking into that victim mindset. But as you said, Caroline, when you can then rise above and change what you think of yourself, you then become a victor. And really what Faith Brynels Insights likes to promote is that it's not an event, it's a journey. So everything that you said really coincides with our mantra, because your change might not happen tomorrow, but every day, if you change the way you think about it, it really has an impact. And it goes into James Clear's book on atomic habits. But if you change yourself, just by that 1%, you're then making yourself into a better person. You're building on those skills for the future.
Yeah, that's why I love the word progression. Okay, so that's what I do. It's like we're progressing, but our progression individually as well, as we are a work in progress. And the important thing about that is you don't have to have it all figured out and have done it all in a really clinical, like within a day. Every day that you're paying attention to this work, being intentional about how you think, how you show up, you are progressing. So I love that sort of the journey.
Yeah, honestly, Caroline, I love that cycle, and really, you've just reiterated everything that we're trying to promote, and that we do promote here at FBI. And just really going into your coaching, because you've really touched on coaching, which has really piqued my interest. How do you actually approach coaching individuals facing imposter syndrome, especially in the legal profession?
Yeah, so I always, when I'm coaching, whether in the legal profession or otherwise, we always start with the goal that you want to achieve. So typically my clients will come to me and they want to be further along. That might be promotion to partner. It might be to, if they're in-house, they might want to be promoted to head of legal or general counsel. So we get really clear on the goal. And where imposter syndrome comes up is then when we set out and we've got a clear path to achieving that goal, and we see all of the ways in which imposter syndrome holds them back. So the most obvious example being the way one of the sort of symptoms or indicators of imposter syndrome is this like desire to stay hidden, to play small. So you can be working on really big, impressive deals and transactions, but if you're afraid of the exposure that comes with that, then maybe you're letting the emails go out in someone else's name. Maybe you're not sharing the successes on LinkedIn or raising your visibility. Maybe in meetings on being quiet. So if you've got the goal of being a partner, right, or of getting a new role somewhere else, and you are hiding all of your achievements, that is going to be an obstacle to achieving your goal. So understanding exactly how imposter syndrome is showing up to hold you back is the first, that's the first step to then figure out, okay, how do we make this your strength? How do we work on this to propel you forward? And then we go to work on that. So what I have is a catalogue of different ways I don't know if diagnose is the right word, but different symptoms of, I call them the secret signs of imposter syndrome. And we identify what those are, and then we work on them. But overall, I don't want to get caught in the weeds here. Overall, the key is, number one, the understanding of how your imposter syndrome shows up for you, right? So using that example, it stops me from speaking up. Number two is also a learning about why your imposter syndrome is there and understanding that it's not a problem. So that's what I teach. It's there quite simply because you're the only person of color in the room. Of course you feel like an imposter. It's not a problem. Nothing's gone wrong. So taking away sort of charged energy, negative energy around it,
remove the stigma,
is really yeah. And then what we do is we recognize it and we use it to our advantage. So if you are the only Black person in the room, so here's a great example of this. Actually, I can't help but share. One of my clients was talking how she likes to play golf. Now, my client is a senior Black female lawyer.
Wow.
Not the typical person we're used to seeing going out playing golf with clients, right? It's normally the middle-aged white male, right?
Yeah.
And so we were talking about that, and I'm like, how exciting is this? You get to be the Black woman who goes and plays golf, like stands out in a crowd, right? So you stand out from the crowd. You're the one that can add value to the room just being in the room. So I really show them and help to raise their self-concept, the way they think about themselves as the only person in the room. And it comes back to raising their self-concept from I'm the only one to I'm the first.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. Yeah, exactly.
And that narrative
that's the work we do.
shifted.
Yeah, and that's how the imposter syndrome that makes you feel like the only one becomes your strength, because it's the thing that makes you feel like the first, and it's so empowering, and you're so memorable, you stand out, you add value.
Wonderful, Caroline. And, you know, it really goes back to what I said before. As I said before, that is a really, really profound concept as well, because you're moving from, oh, I'm the only one, to be the first. That in itself should be an award-winning title, honestly, because it really embodies it really embodies the struggle and that people go through, being people of color, and feel like that they're the only one in the room for different reasons, and really being able to push beyond that narrative and change that, so that they're not the only one but be the first. And really it goes back, you kind of alluded to this when you spoke about the white environment of the legal profession, and it's something that I am familiar with. And you know, a lot of people ask me, you know, some people are quite ignorant when they ask me, oh Faith, you know, what's the point of trying to become a barrister if everybody's white? And I say, well, you know, we can still offer a perspective. So it goes back into my question now. When your clients do come to you for coaching and they say, I want to be a partner, a Black partner, for example, what strategies or techniques do you find most effective in helping them actually recognize and embrace their value?
Yeah, so we do a lot of work on like personal brand. And I mean, there's a process that I walk them through, which are the key factors that are really what I call the sort of 5 essentials of career progression. So we cover personal brand and building relationships. So those key strategies, but we do it with a very specific emphasis on like who they are and how they are different. So I'll give you an example. A key part of success in any profession, but especially in the law, and if you want to be a partner, is your ability to build relationships. That's internally within your firm or your chambers, your organization, but also externally, right? And being client facing. And what tends to happen, especially if you think about yourself as the only one in the room, is you tend to maybe you should be networking and building relationships, but you spend a lot of time with the people who you know, or you go out and you find people who look like you, and that's where you spend most of your time. And that is great when it comes to feeling comfortable, but it isn't what will progress your career, right? What will progress your career is if you spend time building relationships with people who are different to you. So that's one of the great examples of the ways in which, understanding your value in a room where you are the only one of you, right, surrounded by people who are. When I put it like that, it's quite easy. If we were talking about a rare diamond, if we were talking about an early edition of a rare book, you put that in amongst loads of new things, right, just to show a contrast, and you'd be like, that's the most valuable thing in the room, the thing that's different, the one that's unique. So that's how I help my clients start thinking about themselves as the unique, valuable person in a room full of people who are the same. And what I do is, one of the things I do is I support you to be building relationships with the people and putting yourself in those rooms with people who are different to you. A bit like, you know, your friends or people saying to you, why would you want to be a barrister when it's full of white people? It's like, that's the room I want to be in. I love walking into rooms where I'm the only one in and I can challenge stereotypes, and stand out from the crowd, because it's so cool.
Excellent, Caroline. Thank you. And that's a very good analogy that you just used, really, to really depict and understand the value of something new and different. You know, and I think that's very, very important. As I said, there are a lot of white people and other people who have been instrumental to me, really giving me advice and tips as well. And so what we can't just do is assume that all white people are going to bar us from success. And what we have to do change how we view ourselves, because if we go and say, you know, well, all white people are just, you know, are going to be against me, I'm not going to get anywhere, then you're almost letting your kind of fear, that's imposter syndrome again, because you haven't even stepped into the room yet you believe that people are against you. And actually, sometimes it's the people who you think would be for you are not for you, and the people that you wouldn't expect to be for you are for you. So it really goes back to what you were saying as well. Speak to people who don't look like you. Get out there, you know, post on your LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and it really just before. Yeah, go on, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing
Oh,
and nodding
yeah.
heartedly with you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you though, because you made a very good point about in terms of like, it's not just about going into a room and standing there, but how important, how vital is networking then in terms of, you know, moving past and also, as you said, to use this imposter syndrome and embracing it. But how important is networking in terms of still allowing them to reach their goals and potential?
Yeah, well, people, right? Connections, and like that's, if you think about the people you know are the opportunities that you attract,
Yeah,
right? So it's because, for example, you can be very, very good at your job. You can be the best lawyer in the world, but if
yeah.
no one knows about that, if no
That's
one
true.
knows who you are, right, then it's not going to serve all that talent, all that value, but
It's true.
it's not known. So one of the great things, there are two things I love about networking when it comes to imposter syndrome. One is how it gives you access to so many people who are like potentially be willing to support you and send opportunities your way. That's a great benefit of networking. It creates a lot of know, like, and trust, that know, like, and trust factor, which is really essential for people who are going to support you. So getting out there and meeting people is really key. But specifically with imposter syndrome, the other thing about networking is it creates a situation in which you are usually going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
It allows you to test going out, feeling the discomfort of being a little bit self-conscious, but going out and testing it and step by step, building your confidence
yeah,
actually by doing. So this is really key because there's this perception that, oh, I just need to be more confident, then I can go out and network more.
yeah,
But actually going out and networking is going to help to build your confidence because it's going to create a little bit of tension, a little
yeah,
bit of stress,
yeah.
but good stress. Stress like when you go and work out. I was working out in the park yesterday. It was snowing. It was freezing. It was horrible.
Wow.
It was my first big session back. But the reason why I mention that, right, is because exercise is very important to me. It's very important for us as humans. And what we do when we go to the gym or exercise is we put our muscles under a bit of stress in
Yeah,
order for them to grow and be stronger. And it's a little bit like that with imposter syndrome and networking, creating that very like managed stress, right, that actually helps you to get stronger, build
yeah,
your practice, build your confidence in an environment where, like, if you were left to your own devices, you would really rather not be, you'd rather not be
yeah.
going in a room like that.
I love that
So I think
analogy. Yeah.
it's really key.
I love that analogy, Caroline. That is a great analogy, really, just again to understand why we should put ourselves in those uncomfortable positions, because in the end, it's stretching and challenging us more than we will ever know. And just finally, really, how can the listeners kind of contact you after the show has ended?
Yeah, so I'm on all the socials. My main platform, however, is LinkedIn. So
Okay.
please connect with me, Caroline Flanagan. You find me. I'm wearing a red dress. I'm very smiley, and obviously lovely brown skin. I'm also on Instagram, although less frequently, and of course my website, carolineflanagan.com.
Well, thank you, Caroline. This has been a very, very fruitful discussion about imposter syndrome, not just trying to remove it, but really embracing imposter syndrome in your life, in your career. So thank you very much. I want to thank all of the listeners for coming back to listen to season 6 and episode 6 with Caroline Flanagan and myself, Faith Brynel, to really hear about what she's doing and really making it a great impact and difference in a number of lives as well. So without further ado, this is your host, Faith Brynel, and I'm signing off. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.